Good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. How about Phil Vattel's coming out party, right? Everybody knows who he is now, right? I read about him all the time. Listen, it's just such a privilege to be here, and I want to thank Kevin and Donnie for putting this together, and sort of want to thank them for selecting me in a way. It's kind of one of those things where when you have an active life like we all do, we're all in this industry, and there's more work than you'll get done in a day, and you have this opportunity where you have to quickly respond. And my response when they asked me to do the welcome conference was an emphatic yes. And that's sort of what I'm talking about today, and I think we've heard some of this theme through today's talk. But let me set the stage for you a little bit. Let me tell you about what it's like at my house in the morning circus. So I have a beautiful wife, a wonderful 3.5-year-old son who is, if any of you have kids will know, can be a handful. A 3.5-year-old is, a bit of a challenge, a great blessing for sure. And the morning routine goes something like this. I usually get up a little earlier. Maybe I've worked out, a couple of emails, done some work. But we meet in the kitchen. We meet in the kitchen, and that's where it begins. I'm passing Maria, Maria's passing me. Ollie's trying to eat, food's going on the floor, some of it's going in his mouth, and we're all rushing. And it was this particular morning, and Maria said to me, she said, what's wrong with you? I said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about this welcome conference. She's like, the welcome conference in September? It's like 4 months away. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. So I was there, and so I dug in to help out with Alessandro for a second, and then she said something else to me that resonated, and she said, you know what, honey, you know what, and when Maria talks like this, I listen, and she said, you know what, honey, you know what I think it is? You know what I think what stresses you out? Is that you say yes to everything. And I said, you're right. I've heard this before. I've actually heard this my entire life. It might be possible that I have the inability to say no. And I'm sure some of you are like that, right? So you've got a mountain of things to do, and you just say yes. So that really led to what I wanted to talk about today. And then the title of my talk, if you saw me on the Steppenwolf playbill, I've always wanted to say that. And I just got to say it. So that was awesome. Thank you for that. The title of my talk is Hospitality Bird Dog. And before we go any further, I want you to know what a bird dog is and why these characteristics are interesting to me and why I consider myself a hospitality bird dog. The bird dog, what you're looking at there, is a German short-haired pointer. And in this particular pose, he's on point. He is powerful, directed, works tirelessly. This dog will run through a frozen cornfield for hours until its paws bleed. It doesn't have the capacity to say no. It says yes to almost everything. It'll jump into a frozen lake to retrieve a duck. You get what I'm saying, right? So I'm thinking, this is a hospitality bird dog. But just in case, I want you to know, this is a great dog. It's not a bird dog. It's not a hospitality bird dog. Loving, delightful pup, but not a hospitality bird dog. Along with those traits of loyalty and power and strength and action, there's also a little bit of a dark side. It is a dog that, if not given the right task, if not given the right challenge, it'll chew your shoes up and piss on the floor, for sure. It can be extremely destructive to itself and to those around them, and to those around it. So that is, in my mind, what a hospitality bird dog is. And when I think about this idea of the challenges that are there, it's my contention that when we say yes to everything, that's not a bad thing. It's just that we're not saying yes to the right things. And this idea of saying no is really, and I know if Danny's talk was amazing, and this idea of learning to say no is so important, but there's some of us, I'm sure there's some of us in this room that just don't have that capacity. I mean, we're bred this way, we're made this way. And so I want to talk a little bit about the science of it. And I promise this is the only technical slide in here. The rest, it's a picture book. But I need you to know the 4 reasons, because I think there's people like me. There are other people like me. And I'll tell you some of my observations and some of my story in just a minute, and where I've encountered this hospitality bird dog essentially all over the business. Behavioral is something that we call preconditioned. This is something that where the idea to say yes to everything, or the idea to please or to work hard, would be something that it's the way we grew up. I grew up on a ranch. I grew up in rural Idaho, and I can tell you I know a hard day's work. It's really all I know. And so that is one of the conditions, or one of the attributes. Cognitive is another component. This need for mental stimulus, this would create somebody who says yes to everything, or somebody who is a hospitality bird dog, in my opinion. Somebody who wants to or needs to always have this a mental stimulus. You see it in great chefs, you see it in great artists in a lot of different fields. Something they have to be working in order for their brain to function the right way. And then there's motivational. This is an easy one. Everybody can figure this one out. Why do we do it? Oftentimes we do it for money. People work hard for a promotion, for a raise. There is a negative side to this motivational piece. It could be somebody's working a lot or saying yes to everything because they're hiding in their work, right? So it's an escape route for them. And then there's the last one, which is probably the most important to me. And when I talk about these characteristics that make up hospitality bird dog, I would say that all of the high performers that I've been around in the industry in my life have had a bit of these characteristics, but many of them have an emphasis in one particular place. And for me, the emphasis is in emotional. So I grew up, like I said, on a ranch, and I'm going to ask for a bottle of water real quick. If somebody could run one out to me. Thank you. Make the rest of this talk easier. So I grew up on a ranch. I grew up with thanks so much. Thanks, Fernando. Fernando from Tenzing. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Fellow Master Sommelier, this is not Chardonnay. We'll finish off with the emotional piece. Important to me because my mom had a mood-related illness, suffered from depression, and it was a big part of my life growing up. And I found out right away at a very young age that if I did something nice for her, if I did something, if I cleaned the house, if I brought her something to eat or whatever, she'd spend weeks in bed, that this would give this emotional reward. So I needed the pat on the head, right? That's what I was looking for. This has served me pretty well, this idea of saying yes to everything. As Maria pointed out, my first job in the hospitality industry was with Chef Charlie Trotter, and I want to tell you a little bit about that experience. Because any of you who have worked or had the opportunity to work with him or around him would certainly say he was a master of bird dogs, absolute master, commanded a fleet of them. I got a job with Charlie Trotter when he brought his first restaurant outside of Chicago to Las Vegas, Nevada, in the mid-90s. Namesake restaurant, Charlie Trotter's at the MGM Grand. I was hired with zero front of the house experience, zero hospitality experience, really. And I found out that Charlie often hired people without front of the house experience. He hired people with aptitude, with attitude, people that were willing to work extremely hard, and really people that always said yes. We chef. Said it a lot of times. And we had an amazing team in Las Vegas, an unbelievable team. I'm sure some of you were there, and it was a 65-seat restaurant at the MGM Grand, $4.5 million build-out, and that's where I started. I walk into my first day on the job, and the job is an entry-level job, I should say. It's not the lowest job in the front of the house, but it's called a busser. And yeah, technically an entry-level position. And there was other people there, back servers, front servers, captains, and of course a sommelier on the floor. I walked to the credenza, I walked across the Axminster carpet, got to this list of opening side work. You've all been there, you know what this is about. There's a list of things to do. Polish the Christoffel, polish the Riedel stemware, organize the linens, vacuum the floors. And I signed up for something. But when I signed up for it, I realized to myself, I thought to myself, I'm going to be the first one here tomorrow, and I'm going to pick what I want. And so the next day I showed up to the call time 15 minutes early, and thinking I would have my opportunity to sign up for whatever I wanted. And sure enough, there were 3 other bird dogs working already. And that's when I had a revelation. And the revelation was that this industry is full of people that are willing to work extremely hard for various reasons, right? All of those that I just spoke about. But I'm not deterred. I don't give up easy. You'll learn this about me as you get to know me. And so I said, I will be there. I will go I'll go earlier every day until I'm the first person there and I can sign up for whatever side work I want to. And it took about 2 weeks. And it was about 45 fucking minutes before my shift started. And I'm like, these guys are nuts. What's going on here? So I get to the credenza, and there it is, the list with all of these things. All of these things on the list, and the very last one was cleaning the bathrooms, cleaning the Villeroy and Bach toilets. And that's what I signed up for. And you've all been there. And I asked myself, this is an observation that I've had since just a few months ago, where I was thinking about why do I always say yes? Why did I choose that? This is a behavior. I wanted the pat on the head. I wanted people to know that I was willing to work harder than they were for the same prize. I would do anything to succeed, anything. And so over the course of the next dozen years of my life, saying yes to everything proved really good. It was amazing for my career. I took the toughest challenges that you can possibly imagine and said yes to all of them. I said yes to the Master Sommelier. I have several Master Sommelier colleagues in the audience today. It's not an easy test. It's been written about as potentially the hardest exam in the world. It was really good for me. I needed it. I had to do it. I was born to sort of work this way. That's how my brain works. And so this started to really catapult my career. And I think what you saw was this rise towards more challenges and more successes. I opened my first restaurant. I said yes to opening my first restaurant. I said yes to working 100 days in a row without a day off. I think a lot of you have been here in that same place. A little sidebar here, when you do that, what's the emotion that you feel when you take your first day off? Guilt. Why am I not there? Why those guys can't do it without me? And so this started to become embedded in me 25 years ago. So standing in the kitchen, listening to my wife say, you say yes to everything. This is sort of me saying, there's a reason why I say yes to everything. It's been there all along. I said yes to opening another new restaurant. I said yes to, and it doesn't really matter. This isn't so much about what I did in my career as why I did it, what was propelling me to do it. And I continued to go like this, professionally, and myself personally, in the exact opposite direction. I was saying yes so much that I wasn't doing the right thing for myself personally. And when we talk about the equivalent of a bird dog chewing up shoes and peeing on the floor, in our industry, it happens all the time. And it might be akin to having 2 extra drinks at night and sleeping with a coworker. Shocking, right? No one's ever heard about that before. That's impossible. It just doesn't happen. I know it's a touchy subject, and it's really tough. But I believe the problem is that we're not saying yes in the right places. So as my career started to grow, a dozen years after Charlie Trotter's, it essentially arrived at a place where I had 3 restaurants, 2 retail wine shops, and an importer and a wholesale distributor. And I sold the wholesale distributor, and it was one of the greatest and one of the worst times of my life. When I sold the wholesale distributor, it changed everything on paper, and it ruined me as a person. I did an integration into a corporate role, into a corporate job, the company that had bought my independent wholesale distributor. And I started to integrate into this company, and I realized, lovely company, just like that dog, lovely dog, but it just didn't have the power and the drive and what I needed to have as a challenge. So as I woke up in 2009, I woke up on what would look like, with 2 realities. One reality is, this is amazing on paper. The other reality is this is terrible, really inside. And I checked all those boxes of peeing on the floor and chewing up shoes. I was extremely overweight. I was drinking way too much. I was separated on my way to a divorce. I was depressed, extremely depressed. And the optics of depression changed for me at this time. As I told you, my mom suffered severely from depression. And in 2009, I got the call from home that my mom had decided to commit suicide. And I have to tell you, it was painful, but it wasn't shocking. It wasn't shocking because she'd lived a tortured life her whole life. And in 2009, it was a wake-up call, for sure. And I started to look at depression and mental illness and started to study it and to learn about it. And in one of my readings, I came across a piece of writing from David Foster Wallace, an amazing author, writer, teacher, all the above. And he wrote, "No one knows what it's like to jump from a burning building unless, in fact, you're inside that burning building." And that made a lot of sense to me. It made me see that I would never really, really understand what it would be like to commit suicide. And I had a choice to really be destructive or continue to be destructive or to change my life. And so I just said right away, I'm going to change my life. This is easy. I'm going to choose the hard route. I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to lose weight. I made a list. First thing I did, quit my job. I quit my corporate job that had a very good paycheck, corner office, view of the lake, unobstructed views, and I started a new company. I hired people that were like-minded, people that I wanted to be around, people that would accept this sort of challenge. We started Tenzing Wine and Spirits, and I still run it today. It's a company that has a very different approach to wholesale beverage and distribution. And I started on this journey over a couple years. I had lost like 20 pounds. I was studying about how to make sure that my little sister could handle, because my little sister had given me the news. She was suffering from depression as well. She'd given me the news about my mom. And I was there trying to make sure that I was supportive to her. And no shit, this is the truth. Just 2 years after my mom passed away, my sister jumped from the burning building too. That was tough. That was a shocker. But I was already on the path. I was already on the path to recovery and changing myself and realizing that I could say yes to bigger things. And so I did and thank God for the hospitality industry, and thank God for the strength that they gave me to make the move that was right. And the move was to do something even greater, even bigger. And so along my studies and of mood-related illness and depression, I had encountered a doctor from the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Mark Fry, who's the head of the psychiatry and psychology department, with a particular emphasis in mood-related illness. And I said to Dr. Mark Fry, I said, listen, I want to do something to make an impact. Would you collaborate with me and with the Ironman Foundation? Here I am saying yes, believe it or not, to an Ironman. I just have to pick the hardest fucking thing out there. So I don't want to do another wine dinner, honestly. I don't want to show up I'm happy to do it, guys, no, really, but it doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't do anything for me. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to figure out, how do I transition all of that energy from my professional life into saying yes and doing something right in my personal life. And so I did. So I was surrounded by wonderful people. And I chose to do this Ironman, and I had Mayo Clinic on my tag, on my bib number. But the biggest thing was for me to go out and raise awareness and raise money and to help Dr. Mark Fry in something very specific. Dr. Mark Fry, at that point in time, 2013, Dr. Mark Fry was doing research on ketamine and what the effects of ketamine are in bipolar disorder, what my mother suffered from. Because I had that specific goal, just like a rabbit, a duck in a lake, or whatever it is, I could go get it. It was an amazing process. I don't know if any of you have done an Ironman, but this is me when I crossed the finish line. Thank you. I was smiling to get through that day of suffering. Louisville. I had to pick the hottest place as well. 98 degrees, 96% humidity. There are people in the audience that were actually there for the race to cheer me on. Thank you for being there. And then I knew, my friend Doug said to me, he said, I knew it was a hot day out there when a spectator passed out. Okay. So that was a good day. I smiled, but that's not why I did it. This is why I did it. I did it. I did it for my sister and my mom. I did it because I feel like there's power in saying yes. I feel like there's an incredible opportunity to do good by saying yes. And I don't ever want to miss an opportunity to say yes. And so that's really the bottom line. And if you do share similar characteristics of me, I sit here today in the twilight of my career with gray whiskers, has a bird dog who is sort of wondering what the next steps will be, who has been very successful since post my little sister at pushing at yes in my personal life in a way that I push at yes in my work life. That's the key. And I'm surrounded by those of you that are here, and I'm going to tell you that it's easy to not be destructive. I mean, it's hard to not be destructive and to not be, and to lose your way, especially when you're working 15-hour days in the hospitality industry. But you just have to focus on making the transition to saying yes the right way and to yes where it's needed. And if you do this, I think you can eliminate that destructive nature of yourself. I've done just as many new companies since 2013, since doing this and putting this sort of behind me. I've had just as many entrepreneurial experiences and just as many great people around me to work, and wonderful success at home with my son and my wife. So I also want to thank the bird dogs that said yes to putting on the Welcome Conference, because I'm sure their plate's a mile high too, and they said yes, we're going to do the Welcome Conference, Donnie and Kevin and all the boys from New York and Washington. Remember this, that if you can transfer that energy from your stressed out work life in a positive way, find something specific to you that will drive you and motivate you to put that same energy in. And if you can save a life by doing so, it might just be your own. Thank you.